Yo, what's up guys, Hazard, and today I've got an awesome PC build for you guys, and this comes in at under $350, and it's going to be able to handle most PC games at high settings with a decent FPS. You're even going to be able to run games like GTA at ultra settings, so this is a serious PC build that packs a huge punch. This is going to be great for those of you who are looking to build your first PC but you're on a super tight budget, and I hope this video does help you out. As always, drop any questions you have down below and I'll be very happy to help out. Now before getting into the parts, this has a lot of potential to be improved in the future, and overall it's an extremely solid build for the money that's going to last you into the next couple years. So starting off with the GPU, this is going to handle the bulk of everything you're doing, and so I wanted to make sure we're getting a strong pick here. That's why I went for the GTX 1050, and this is going to handle games extremely well compared to a lot of the other GPU choices out there. Taking a look at the benchmarks here, the Pascal architecture has done wonders for graphic cards. I say it in every video, and that's just because it's true. So with the 1050 we're able to hit pretty high frame rates, and at $100 it's an absolute steal in terms of the price to performance ratio. Now going along with the GPU, I've chosen the Pentium G3258, which is an extremely popular pick for PC builds like this one. The G3258, for those of you who don't know, is easily one of the craziest CPUs Intel has ever made, just because of how much power it packs into such a small price tag. The CPU alone is going to perform extremely well compared to others in this price range, but the beauty about this is that with the motherboard I've chosen, you can overclock this right up to something like 4.5 GHz if you just buy a CPU cooler. So with speeds like that on this CPU and the awesome GPU I've picked out for you, this Pentium processor will be up to par with some i5 and i7 processors, which is just absolutely crazy, and this is a really good CPU to pick for this build. So I touched on the motherboard briefly, and we're going for the H81P33 motherboard, and this is going to house all of your components nicely, with the key feature being that you can overclock this with the Pentium. When you're going for a motherboard in such a cheap build, you want to make sure that it can comfortably house all of your components, but it has to be reliable. The last thing we obviously want is for it to somehow fail and kill all of your components, so that's why I went for the P33. It's solid, reliable, and it comes in at a very nice price tag of $45. You're even going to be able to handle heavy overclocking if you're careful, so that makes it perfect for this build as well. So next up, this is one of the only compromises we're having to make with this build, but that's just the unfortunate reality of having to work with such a tight budget. Now that compromise is the storage space, because we only have 320 GB rather than the 1TB mark that we usually try to aim for. This is using a Western Digital drive, but of course you can swap this out for any other brand you see, especially if there's a sale going on. Now this is going to be fine for storing games, and of course you can always uninstall once you've completed them, so it shouldn't be a huge issue for you, but you want to be careful, because once you've got your operating system and other software that you do need, you are going to be down under that 300 GB mark, so it is worth getting another storage device once you can. Of course your motherboard can support more than one storage device. Now to power this build, we've got the EVGA 430 watt power supply, and I usually try to stay well above the 500 watt mark, but this is honestly one of the most reliable and popular low-end power supplies, so I was fine to go with this. It is going to be fine for this build, but of course if you can give yourself that extra headroom, then there's no reason not to. Just a little FYI, this comes from personal experience. If you can up that headroom that you've got with your power supply, you will increase the performance, you will decrease your temperatures. It's just great to have that extra headroom, and of course it future-proofs your build, so that's going to be really good to have. For the case, you can pretty much pick up anything you think looks nice. Since we've got a micro ATX motherboard, I thought we'd take advantage of that small form factor and go for the Rosewill micro ATX case to house all of your components. There isn't much to look out for when you're choosing a case. All you want to do is make sure that it has enough storage space, and if it applies to you, make sure that you have enough clearance for an aftermarket CPU cooler. Now in this case, it might be a little bit too small for some air coolers that you use to overclock the G3258, but you should be able to water cool it, and if you can, then you'll have plenty of space left over. Obviously water cooling is more efficient, but air coolers are cheaper and they're just kind of less risky. If it's your first time building a PC, you probably want to go for an air cooler instead, just to minimize the risks. It really doesn't matter though, it's completely up to you. And lastly, we've covered everything in this build apart from the RAM. So for this, it's all about seeing if you can find an awesome sale on RAM, but just make sure that it's compatible with your motherboard. So the RAM has to be DDR3 and DIMM, which means it's for PCs, and you should should aim for 4 to 8 gigabytes. 8 is going to be pretty hard with this build, so I chose 4, and you can always upgrade that in the future to bring it up to par with what you need. In this case, we have a random no-name brand, but definitely check other sites like eBay to see if you can get lucky. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're getting something reliable, but most of the time, even going with a no-name brand isn't going to be an issue for you. I had my main PC running on a no-name brand for a couple years, and it was completely fine, so it's no problem. So guys, that's going to be it for this $350 build. It's going to be able to run most games at high settings, and it's going to be on the edge of that 60 FPS frame rate. With some easy upgrades down the road, you're easily going to be able to get some great performance out of this future-proof build. If you have any questions about anything in this build, definitely hit me up in the comments below that like and subscribe button, but with that, I'm out. Peace.